Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Support this show, but more importantly, get the inside scoop on all things I'm hearing on BYU sports. I will be frank, I don't proclaim to be the BYU insider. There's many guys out there who've got really good sources, much like I do. But the stuff that I am hearing from my sources that I trust, it's going to our Locked On Cougars Insider Group first. And if you want to be a part of that, click the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube. I'm just going to point right down here, click down there, or wherever you get your podcast. There's a hyperlink in there. Sign up today. The best part is you get 14 days of a free trial before you're charged anything, and it's just $5 a month to be a part of the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk more BYU basketball. The Cougars officially entered the national rankings at number 25 on the heels of their back-to-back top 25 upsets of then was it number 23 Kansas and number 19 Arizona. Kansas, as you might expect with the blowout loss, dropped out of the top 25, while BYU went from last week receiving zero votes as far as I recall, and now is number 25 in the national rankings. I'm sure there are some of you wondering why BYU wasn't higher in the rankings. Let me just reiterate. They went from 0 votes to being 25th in the country. That's a pretty impressive rise in the national pollsters' view. But let's also be very clear about this. I asked Kevin Young yesterday during his press conference, are you excited to be 25th in the country? Does it mean much for you? He said, the more I learn about this, and he is coming from the NBA where national rankings and rankings in general just don't really exist. He said that I'm learning about this, and it's a credit to the guys for what they did on the court. But he says, as I'm going along, I'm learning more and more that it doesn't really matter what the end goal for our program is. And that's me paraphrasing what he said. And he's right. Here's the deal. Being ranked 25th, that's awesome. It's a mark of respect for what BYU accomplished this past week. And I said it with Jake Edmonds on the Loyal Cougars podcast yesterday. I think we just enjoyed the best single week in BYU basketball history. Now, some of you are my old-time listeners. I'm a child of the late 1980s, grew up in the 90s. So my point of reference goes back from essentially let's say conservatively 95 on. But there might be some pretty impressive weeks in BYU basketball history, but considering the stakes that BYU had facing them last week with the back-to-back top 25 opponents, the fact that they're members of the Big 12 Conference and they are on their way to the NCAA Tournament and look like they could do some damage there, yeah, I think it's truly the most impressive single week in BYU basketball history. And the nice part is they got nationally ranked as a result of it. But once again, it doesn't matter really in the grand scheme of things. What does this BYU basketball team hope to accomplish? Well, A, they want to make the NCAA tournament. They want to have a fairly advantageous seed, if not be the higher seeded team and face a lower seeded team, and advance. That is what will set this BYU basketball program apart from a lot of the other programs of recent memory. There has been a long drought here since the Jimmer Fredette era of BYU crashing out of the NCAA tournament in the first round. And that is, I think, going to make the difference this year. If BYU crashes out of the tournament in the first round, no matter what seed they are, it's going to be one of those seasons. Okay, yep, BYU just doing what they always do. They peak at the right time, make it into the tournament, and then they crash out. If this BYU team can even if they make it just to the round of 32, they advance one round, get to the round of 32, and then drop out, it will show progress for this BYU basketball team, and it'll build the hype considering what BYU has on deck. AJ DeBonsa, and I think we all obviously overlook the fact that, yes, AJ DeBonsa is the number one prospect in the country, but we're also overlooking what Xavier Staten is bringing to BYU. He is a 7'1" rim protector who is considered by many to be the best big man in this recruiting cycle, at least on the defensive side of the basketball. That's an exciting thing to think about, some of the guys that could come back from this year's team. Guys like a Dallin Hall, if Richie Saunders were to decide to pass on it and run it back for another year. Keba Keita, you look at the roster for BYU, it could be extremely talented and get a major impact player who is the recruiting rankings say that AJ DeBonsa is on the same recruiting plane as Kevin Durant, LeBron James. Think of the who's who of basketball in the last 20 years. Their recruiting rankings were 100. That's AJ DeBonsa's recruiting ranking from 24/7 Sports. It is a perfect rating. He's considered the perfect prospect, the just bona fide number one overall draft pick in the 2026 NBA draft. That is the type of talent coming to BYU. But getting back to the conversation at hand is that Being ranked 25th right now, yes, it's a mark of respect. It's a badge of honor that BYU should wear proudly, and they should carry it in for the rest of the season because they should go 3-1 down the stretch here. And I see no reason why even a loss to Iowa State, who's nationally ranked, would drop you out of the top 25. You handle your business, you're going to remain in the national rankings, and you're probably going to use that to hopefully boost your stock when it comes to the seeding on Selection Sunday. So, yeah, I look at the ranking. I say, yeah, it's awesome for BYU. Congratulations being 25th in the country and keep climbing because I love to see that number next to BYU's name. And Scott Van Pelt said it after that Kansas game. I don't know why BYU doesn't have a number next to their name. Well, Scott, SVP, they do have it now. So celebrate that fact, but also don't lose sight of the fact that BYU, they have got bigger goals. They want to accomplish a whole lot more than just being nationally ranked. In football, national rankings do matter, even in the college football playoff era, because the playoff committee puts out its own rankings and they use those to determine the field. The selection committee in the NCAA tournament, yeah, it's great you're ranked whatever you are, but guess what? Here's our 7 other metrics: net rating, Torvik, Ken Palm, on down the list. That's what's going to help us set the tournament field. So you may be ranked 21st in the country, but guess what? You may still be a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament. It's all going to not depend. It's all going to come down to what do you do in March? And I know that we, in the bigger sports community, we prize results in the postseason way too much sometimes. Let's be honest. March Madness is where legends are made. It's where names are made. It's where you make your mark in the sport of college basketball. And that's got to be the focus for BYU basketball. And based on what Kevin Young was saying yesterday, they have not lost sight of that fact. Yes, they're happy to be ranked 25th, but they know that their ultimate destiny, their ultimate overall, the tenor of the season, what BYU will be remembered for in the 2024-2025 season will be determined next month on one incredible weekend. I love March Madness. I love the NCAA tournament. I watch as much of it as I possibly can consume, and it'll make or break this season for many people when it comes to BYU with what they do in the month of March. And fair or not, that's where it stands for the BYU basketball program. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, thank you for your guys' support. Please continue to subscribe, rate, review, share this with your family and friends. Click the bell notification icon if you're watching this on YouTube so you have a new episode when it drops. You're notified right away. You can be among the first people to check it out. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today. And until tomorrow, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.